You may have noticed that we have lots of options for drinking water today, right? How many of us here really enjoy Indianapolis public water? What about bottled, purified water? What about bottled spring water? How many of you don't care? There is a difference, isn't there? A difference in taste and a difference in liking. But what if you or I were to go to a cistern every day? Do you know what a cistern is? It's basically a hole in the ground that holds water. Now, some used to get their water from the cistern, which was runoff water from the roof. And this was even before creation care. Cisterns are a pool with no movement. The only movement that takes place in the cistern is the bucket splashing down and being drawn back up. And to a certain extent, the water can get kind of stagnant. And it's not very tasty. Why do I talk about this? Because the woman who is at Jacob's well herself calls it a cistern. It's one of those types of pools of water which just sits there waiting. There is no movement except for the splash of the bucket. She comes there every day by herself. And then she meets this Jesus, who's a Jew, who we'll talk about later in terms of the things he's doing that he's not supposed to do. And in their conversation, he offers her water that is springing up and flowing. Now, don't you think he's got her attention? Sweet, flowing, spring-like water. In this gospel, this is the tipping point, my brothers and sisters, the tipping point for the woman at the well. From this point forward, her life is going to change because the Lord offers her something. I have to work on that one. Offers her something that she's longing for. But it's actually not this kind of water. It's water for her spirit. But that doesn't unfold until later when they're talking about spirit and truth. When she's beginning to realize, because he can say to her, I know that's not your husband. In fact, you've had 5 and the one you're with now is not your husband. The beginning of spiritual interest begins to bubble up, flow in the very conversation until the point where she proclaims the Messiah and then goes off to tell other people. She becomes a disciple, a proclaimer, along the same lines and the same terms as the disciples themselves are going to be charged later in chapter 12 of John's Gospel account. All because she was thirsty. But the kind of water that she was going for every day just wasn't doing it for her. She had a greater thirst, and Jesus awoke it. That tipping point. I mentioned those 3 different kinds of water before, and there's even more. Sports water, all that stuff. But think about this, my brothers and sisters. What sort of cistern do we go to every day that is really sort of brackish and stagnant and is not really that fulfilling in our life? Oh, it temporarily quenches some thirst that we have, some emotional thirst, some physical thirst, some psychological thirst. But it doesn't really touch our spirit. But we have been offered a flowing source of water in the Spirit of Christ. I wonder how often we go to this stream, this spring, and drink from it. In word, in sacrament, in reading, in conversation. Are you and I recognizing that thirst and the source that will slake it? Or are we going to settle for our cisterns that will get us by? But that's about all, and will never fully slake our longing in the Spirit. What will be our tipping point when we encounter the Lord at our cistern and He leads us to a spring of life-giving water? Now, there's a second aspect to this gospel which is rather timely for us at this moment in history. And it's an aspect called isolation. The woman at the well, she was very isolated. Some scripture scholars say she went to the well by herself because no one else wanted her around. She was tainted. 5 husbands, and now she's living outside of marriage. And she's a Samaritan to boot. But she's living in Samaria. But here's what happens. She's that isolated by herself at the cistern, which she comes to on a regular basis. Nobody wants to be around her. But Jesus would be with her. And he broke all kinds of rules. First of all, he was talking to a Samaritan woman, which was not allowed for a Jew to do. They were enemies, based in religion, sadly, and culture, even though they were cousins. But more so, Jesus asks her for a drink of water. By accepting a cup of water from this Samaritan woman, he becomes, according to Jewish law, unclean. Oh my. He reaches into the isolation of this woman and risks a lot doing it, to lead her to less isolation and more spiritual health. I know we have a lot of new boundaries. Are we 6 feet away? No. Sorry. And I understand those boundaries scientifically and health-wise. They are the right thing to do. But it's fascinating. We who long not to be isolated are now isolated throughout the world. Brothers and sisters, we are sharing a reality with the world as never before. And there are going to be a lot of people in our lives that normally we would see that we're not going to see for a while. And if you know anything about isolation, isolation itself can be detrimental to one's health. So the question for me is, how are you and I going to find ways to bridge that gap without getting 6 feet near the person, without touching them, without breathing on them, without coughing on them, to break down that isolation? Well, we're blessed to have all sorts of devices that can help us break that down. We have the telephone. Well, most of us have a cell phone. We have a tablet. We have Facebook. We have FaceTime. That's fine. Ginther. We can text each other. We can reach out to each other without breaking down these barriers. And for some, their only experience of Mass for the next weeks is going to be virtual. In fact, our Lenten service this coming Wednesday at Urban Presbyterian, I will be there, their other ministers will be there, and their musicians, but the rest of us are going to be watching it from home if we're going to. Virtually, because we're not going to have the congregation there. But it breaks down the barrier of that isolation. If Jesus could risk that much, how can we risk breaking that down in a responsible manner? Ponder that. Use the devices well. You can even write a letter, but disinfect it before you send it. Tipping point. Isolation. Two powerful moments in the gospel today. Two powerful responses to that line in the first reading. Is the Lord in our midst?